All right, glad to be here and with the local firefighters, first responders, leaders in the community, really to just talk about the fires from last week, the response, the coordinated effort that folks around the state made. Very encouraging to hear the way that agencies from across Tennessee came together to respond to this very dangerous situation. There was a tremendous amount of loss of property. Fortunately, no loss of life, but great to be here and to talk on the ground with the folks that are most connected to what happened last week. So happy to take your questions.
You mentioned a tremendous loss of property. Do you have any idea what the estimates look like now? Are you talking millions of dollars?
Yeah, tens of millions of dollars. There were over 200 structures lost. Some, certainly some vacation homes, some permanent residences for people. Tens of millions of dollars of loss. There's assessments being made now to try to determine just the extent of that. But there was quite a bit of property damage.
And do you expect to have enough to ask the president for a disaster declaration here?
Yeah, it's hard to say. There are thresholds that if we meet those thresholds, then we can make that request. And until the assessments are done, really too soon to say.
What type of financial aid can homeowners expect?
I think it depends on the federal response. FEMA will partner with locals to begin that process once they determine the extent of the damage.
Sir, you got a chance to see some of that damage today. Describe what you saw.
So we flew over and there were a couple things we saw. We saw homes that were burned, completely gone, and that's heartbreaking to see. We saw vast areas of the forest that were burned, particularly the undergrowth in those forested areas. But the thing that was encouraging to me and that was remarkable about what we saw is there were tremendous areas of developed property that had clear fire lines that had been established by the firefighting agencies to keep the fire from crossing over those lines into those developed areas. I think what happened here in 2016 obviously was a tremendous disaster, but we learned from challenges, and there was much learned from the 16 fire that was used in fighting this fire. And we saw a lot of damage, and there's a lot of property loss. But what you could see from the air is what could have been, except for the coordinated efforts of the professionals that really fought the fire for those 3 days.
I know in there you got a chance to meet and see some first responders there. What do they need right now? What kind of sense are you getting from those folks that helped combat this over the last week?
Yeah, we asked specifically for them to think through. And I said to those of you who are actually on the ground, think through what you wish you had more, what you wish we could have done differently. Yes, we had a really great response, and there was a lot of damage that was prevented, but we can always do better. And that's a question that I laid out them today. What do you need? What could you have had? How could we have supported better? And I think we'll get that feedback.
Along those lines, sir, do you think that there's anything the state can learn from this event?
Absolutely. The Department of Forestry played a key role in this. There were bulldozers on the sides of the mountains creating part of the fire roads, a very coordinated effort that included Department of Forestry and the firefighting group of that department. We too will collectively, with all of the agencies, do a sort of a post-tragedy review and begin making that list of what we need to do better. I think everyone in that room was very appreciative of what happened in that response, but very much interested in continuing the dialogue so that we can get better at what we do.
We had multiple volunteer fire departments that lost apparatus in this fire. Will the state be able to do anything to help them replace those quickly?
So I think we'll look at that. That's one of the things we talked about as well. We wanted to know who lost equipment and how they lost it. You talked about multiple agencies. I think there were 78 fire departments that responded from around Tennessee to this fire. That's the volunteer spirit at work. That's who we are in Tennessee, but it shows up in particular in an event like this. So we'll be taking those assessments for who lost what equipment and see if there are grants available and how we can be of service.
WAT?
Were you pretty devastated when you first got up in the chopper and saw everything? What happened?
Well, I certainly was. Like with any tragedy, you look at burned home after burned home after burned home, and you know that there's a lot of heartache with that. There's a lot of financial loss with that. I mean, when you think about losing everything in your home, it's heartbreaking to see. That was hard, and knowing the struggle, but seeing what didn't burn because of the efforts of the first responders was it was kind of a mixed blessing there. Seeing what happened, which was tragic, but what could have happened but didn't because of the efforts was very encouraging.
I think we have time for one more question. WAT?
Anybody got one?
Ready?
With some big fires here in the past couple of years in this area, should the state dedicate more resources to fire prevention?
I think that we already are, in the local community in particular, is raising awareness for those who live in this community to be fire aware. We talked a little bit about wildfire awareness. I think there's a particular day on the 7th of May in this community that is dedicated to wildfire awareness. The way you clear the undergrowth around your home, the type of roof that you have, the way you prepare your property for potential fires is really important. We saw structures that were entirely burned to the ground, and right next to them structures that did not burn in the fire, in part because of the preparation potentially that this homeowner made for their property. I think that's what the state will work together with the locals to do, is how do we elevate awareness? Let me say one other thing about what happened here. There was a real significant change in the way we communicate locally with regard to evacuations. And in fact, there was law changed after 16 that allowed for a simpler process to call for evacuations. The evacuation process here went very rapidly. It was very effective. Evacuated, I think, a quarter of the residents of the affected area, and that wouldn't have happened were it not for the changes that were made from the last fire to this fire. That's the kind of thing that we want to see happen this time, is what could be done better? How can we make, should there be another event? We certainly hope there's not, but should there be another event, how can we improve on it? Thank you all very much for being here. Yep. That's right. That's right. There's investigations. Yeah, there's investigations being done by both Department of Forestry and FBI or TBI.